Good afternoon, everybody. I guess morning for Eric. It's still morning for Eric in Seattle. Uh, Welcome back to 22 Panels. My guest this morning is it co-publisher and president? I forget the title. I should have looked that up before we started.
Vice president.
Vice president of of
Gary is still the president.
still the president. Okay. Well, I didn't know if he'd come up with a higher title. I mean, we're baseball guys. What
Yeah,
used to be
right.
the general manager is now the president of baseball operations.
That's right. Exactly.
We now don't have bench coaches. We have assistant managers and bench coaches.
That's right.
Um, so Eric Reynolds, to celebrate the 50th year of Fantagraphics, which is crazy. I mean, I guess on one level it's not crazy because like Marvel and DC are older than me too, but like everybody knows Marvel and DC and they've got like a whole different remit. So for me to think, oh wow, Fantagraphics that I love all these comics from, and I think of the comics that I love as primarily things that came out of Vertigo and going forward is older than me. It's just like it's always a weird thing to wrap my head around. So
Well, yeah. Suppose it is myself as well.
and amazingly older than Love and Rockets, though not by that much. Because that's the other thing that I have
Yeah.
always associate. I mean, now I associate all sorts of things with Fantagraphics. I'm not trying to limit you to the one thing. Um, so let me start with uh, how long have you been there? I know that you've been there a long time, but not since the beginning, or have you been there since the beginning and just in different roles?
No, no. I started in 1993. So
Okay.
what is that? Going on 33 years?
Yeah. Yeah. So not quite as long as I've been alive. I was reading comics by then. And then the other question that I would ask, just because it's I'd love to hear it from somebody on the inside. How would you describe Fantagraphics to somebody?
Well, I guess it depends on who I'm describing it to a little bit.
Right?
Um, you know, if I'm talking to somebody who really doesn't know anything about comics, I just say we're a publisher of comics and graphic novels and cartoon related works, that we tend to stay away from most of the traditional genres that most people associate with comics, superheroes and sci-fi and fantasy and stuff like that. Though not rigidly.
Right.
Um,
I was about to say, I
and
think you've had examples of all of those in the last year.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Certainly all of them in the next year.
Probably, yeah.
Didn't you just announce a Barry Windsor Smith
We did
Marvel
a
thing?
Marvel collection of all this Marvel work. I was just looking
Right.
at some of the proofs day before yesterday. Looks
Right.
great.
Oh,
So
it
yeah,
does.
so and then I try not to get too highfalutin with it in terms of um trying to make us, sound good or try to kind of over legitimize ourselves. But I think that if I'm digging a little deeper, the company has just always reflected the tastes of the publishers, whether it be Gary Groth or the late Kent Thompson or myself. And that I think, we've proven to be pretty good at that,
Yeah.
following our own
I
instincts versus chasing trends. Um, I think that's been kind of historically our strength. and
yeah.
and 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 our strength in opposition to the way much of the industry operates
Right.
over the last several decades.
I'll add one thing and say that certainly all through the years, you have appreciated both craftsmanship
Hmm.
and people who utilize the inherent assets of comics.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I do. I mean, I myself personally, I'm a huge craft nerd. I'm a cartoonist myself. Um, so
I didn't
before
realize
you,
that.
so yeah, so when you and I just started talking, we talked when you brought up Wally Wood and 22 panels, and um, I absolutely revere Wood's work from a craft perspective.
Oh yeah.
But then I also really value um, personal expression, utilizing the tools of the medium and having an idiosyncratic point of view, something unique to say. And then, utilizing the craft of comics in the service of that, whether you're a slick illustrator like Wood or a much more highly stylized, uh, unique cartoonist. Whether it be a Richard Sala. Uh, I think of a cartoonist like Mark Beyer, who is hardly a great, and we don't even publish Mark Beyer. He's just a cartoonist that I admire a lot.
Ah, okay, I'm seeing it.
He's from Raw Magazine, and
Yeah, yeah.
Rory Hayes would be another good example, underground cartoonist who, uh,
So, see, this is there's a handful of people that I get to talk to that I immediately have to be all over um Google
yeah,
because they toss out names that I don't know. There have been lots of different Roy Hayes. What's a Roy Hayes work that I would be able to find?
Rory,
Rory.
Rory.
Ah, ah. That
He had a
that
he had
would
a
probably make yes, that makes a very different big difference in terms of Googling.
yeah, I don't know who Roy Hayes is, but he
There,
probably
there
drew.
were like four different ones, from politicians to storytellers to.
Sounds like somebody who drew like a Western comic in the 40s.
I hadn't gotten to looking up the comics side of Roy Hayes, so I don't know if there's ever been a Roy Hayes comics guy. Uh, but Rory Hayes looks cool. I like.
Yeah, a real primitive but singular voice in the
Uh,
underground comic scene. He died rather young. So he had a relatively small body of work, but really,
right.
really great, wild stuff.
I'm looking. This is my wife is an art teacher. And one of the assignments she has every semester is you have to do an artist biography, and she lets them do cartoonists and even encourages it sometimes. She does frustrate them because she has a list of acceptable sources. They can't just chat GPT or even just Google. She's like, you can try. She's like, I will allow you to Google, but then you will also list every website you use in detail,
Yeah.
or you can go to my acceptable sources. But she was actually surprised and delighted when I told her that Lambic is actually a comic shop in Belgium, not
Oh yeah.
just not
It's in
just an
it's
encyclopedia of.
That's right. It's actually in Amsterdam, not
Oh, that's
Belgium.
right. Amsterdam. I knew that, and I talked to and I don't know if she's in Belgium right now or not. Yeah. I talked to one of your Leonie Bischoff recently.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
So that had that in my head. Um but yeah. So talk to me about the process of finding things, because the other thing that I love about Fantagraphics, and maybe it's you guys split it up and you each have areas, or I don't know, but you have this mix of new works, both original US and translated,
Yeah.
um, and reprinted or
I'd
collected.
say Archival.
works, yeah, archival, that like is one part undergrounds, one part comic strips, one part
American comic
golden
books.
early
Yeah.
silver age.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
You
There's
know, so,
always there's outliers, but
yeah.
I think those
And there's
three.
stuff that crosses
Hmm.
but if I was going to list what Fantagraphics does, it's the archival that's got those three categories, and it's new stuff split between translations generally European but more South American than any other country I know, and the occasional East Asian.
Hmm.
Though it looks like you're about to do more with that because you just started this year starts a new imprint, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, we got to get into all the 50th year stuff in a minute. Hopefully, we can remember them all between us. Um, but then, like, also English language current underground stuff and or less arc. I don't want to say less archival, but like more direct reprint than collected archival of underground. You know, the Fantagraphics underground is kind of its own thing sometimes. And then,
Yeah.
of course, you've also brought back, and I love you for this, and whoever, you have to tell me who's responsible for this. Who A, brought all the Disney comics to begin with, but B, now has the monthly Duck and Mickey books coming out again, because whoever decided to do that, thank you, and thank you again.
Well, it was mostly Gary Groff who started who got us connected with Disney, and it was the
Ah,
Carl Barks library that
oh,
kickstarted it all.
love Carl
We
Barks.
didn't really set out to become, such a prolific publisher of Disney comics. It really started with just Carl Barks being the kind of one of the great white whales of
Hmm?
cartoonists that at the time, still hadn't really been properly archived like that.
Right.
And then it just kind of grew organically from there. But we literally, I don't think we could do most of the Disney stuff that we do without a fellow named David Gerstein, who
David
is
Kirsten.
an animation kind of scholar, historian, and he's also just happens to be like the most well-informed, well-educated guy on Disney Comics history that I know exists, at least in terms of North America. You get into European Disney Comics, that's kind of a whole nother beast. But yeah, David is just a kind of obsessive Disney fan who really just knows, there's so much Disney stuff out there. Like I said, like there's been so much original work published in Europe,
Yeah.
stuff that like I couldn't even be fully aware of if I wanted to be.
Right.
But he is, so he can help us prioritize like what's the good shit that needs to be collected.
I mean, you guys have done a fantastic job so far. I don't
Yeah,
own it all because like my
how could
pocketbook
you?
won't,
Yeah.
yeah, my pocketbook won't allow it. So, keep sending the free stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it started with Barks, and then the natural extension from there was the Don Rosa Library, which
Right.
was also that was also very much spearheaded by Gary. Gary and Don are peers and had known each other for decades. Don was actually one of the earliest Fantagraphics creators before he started working with Disney.
Oh, wow.
Um, so, and you've got Gary, who is, I guess, about 15 years older than me. And then you've got myself, and we've got different, generational kind of tastes and
Well,
relationships, and I
that
think it all
that
helps each other.
that leads perfectly to one of my favorite questions to ask. Give me your comics biography, not your bibliography, but your biography.
My
Talk
personal
to
story.
Yeah, yeah. Talk to me about like that first comic you remember reading and rereading, the first comic that you were proud to buy, the comics that shaped who you are.
I really don't remember a time when comics weren't in my life. Um, I would have wager it started with the newspapers, probably Peanuts and even Garfield and the popular stuff from the 70s and 80s. Um, and then I also became just a comic book fan from a very early age. I don't remember the first comic book I ever had per se. I I do have a vague memory of going to um, the farmers market in LA with my mom and getting a issue of Action Comics that was drawn by Kurt Swan. And I think at that point I'd already had a couple of other issues, whether of Action or Superman or World's Finest or something. And I do remember like a light bulb going off that this style that was drawn, that Superman was drawn in was like recognizable, that it was like this looks like the other comics that I have. And it was the moment when like I realized there were credits and that this thing was drawn by Kurt Swan, who was not the greatest comic book artist or anything, but he was really good and he was really solid. And he was the first guy whose name I remember. Like
Well, and he's also, I
I
mean, absolutely indelibly tied to Superman.
yeah, he was like, he was arguably the quintessential
Right.
Superman. But he was the first guy that I basically remember pairing up the visual style with the name. And
Okay.
then from there, it was just kind of like I always approached comics as from a visual standpoint, I was always attracted to the drawing. And so when I realized that, that I could pin the drawing to the specific artists, that kind of opened the floodgates, I think. And I was really young, I think, at that time. Like I don't even know, maybe 7. Um, and so from there, it was just like I was just kind of obsessed. I grew up buying comics at 7-Eleven. Then when I was about probably old enough to ride my bike like a mile or two, there was a little kind of punk rock record store newsstand in downtown Huntington Beach in the early 80s where I grew up that had comics, and I would ride my bike there just to go get comics. And then from there, I found out that there was like an actual comic book store about maybe 4 miles from my house. And I had to beg my mom to drive me there. That would have been around like fifth grade, sixth grade, I think.
Do you remember the name of the shop?
Well, I do. It was because I ended up working there for 5 years.
Oh, that's such a common theme.
Yeah, it was the land of oohs and ahs in Fountain Valley, California. And I started working there when I was 15. I worked for comics under the table.
Of course.
And then, then
That's how most of
eventually,
us do it.
yeah, then eventually became a more like, permanent employee. And the original owner, whom I wasn't super crazy about, he sold the store to the manager, and he was a good friend. And I ended up working for him for about
That
four
then your
years.
rate of comic pay got increased.
A little
Rather than
bit.
one comic an hour, it became two comics an hour.
That's right, exactly. And when you worked at a store in those days, this was in the mid to late 80s. Um, there were few enough comics out coming out that you could read like almost literally everything coming out.
Right. Right.
And you'd
Yeah,
have slow days,
that's
where
much
there was
harder to
nothing
do
to do.
today.
Yeah, yeah.
Much harder to do today. There's so many. It's hard to keep up even, and I'll be the first to admit, some people would call me non-discerning. I call myself eclectic. Um, I think that my version of what's good is much broader than a lot of people's versions of what's good. But I can't keep up with new good books coming out, particularly if I want to catch up on any of the old good stuff that I either wasn't alive for or was too busy for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the great, but, and that's why working at that store for me personally was so great because I would, I basically just started reading stuff that I
Yeah.
otherwise wouldn't have been purchasing or
Hmm.
buying
Hmm.
and got a great education. I've started particularly reading like Love and Rockets and then the really big one was the Comics Journal. Reading the Comics Journal month to month in the 80s was uh, a big time crash course in the business, the art form, the industry, the craft. And from there, I just like, it was just, I didn't set out to work in comics, but I also like, in hindsight, like it almost seemed sort of inevitable because I was just like
Right.
completely obsessed.
So, um, tell me a couple of books that you don't think you would have picked up, except that like it was a slow day at the comic shop and you decided to read, that are among your favorites now.
Well, when I first started working at the shop, I would have been like, it was 1985, so I would have been like 14 or 15. And I was still mostly reading stuff like John Byrne's Fantastic Four
Which is really good.
and then, from there, the next like it was a pretty traditional trajectory for people my age. From there, it went to like Alan Moore Swamp Thing. I got really into that. And then of course you had 86, which was Watchmen and Dark Knight
Right.
um, and so I was my tastes were sort of, refining at that time. And then I don't know what the specific like, Rosebud comic was um that really helped me define the types of comics that I really gravitated towards. But again, just working in the shop, I was surrounded by like there's so many anthologies coming out at the time,
I didn't even realize
alternative
that.
anthologies. Yeah, there's huge proliferation of alternative anthologies in the late 80s into the early 90s, where you just see so many great cartoonists. And
More things to look for at used bookshops.
yeah, I mean, just
My wife will thank you.
I mean, obviously the big ones were like Raw and Weirdo,
Right.
but there were so
Oh,
many
okay.
others. There was like Bad News, which was a great uh, anthology edited by Mark Newgarden, who went on to write How to Read Nancy.
Hmm.
Street Music, Honk. I mean, there were all these wild. Drawn and Quarterly started. The
Right.
publisher Drawn and Quarterly started as a
As an
comics
anthology.
anthology.
Okay.
Um,
Now I realize, I guess I was thinking more like anthologies, like hardbound or even
no,
like,
no, no, like
no, no, you're
periodicals.
talking the
Yeah,
periodical anthologies. That I knew more of, but it's still, I'm always happy to hear more names because I know the obvious ones, the Drawn and Quarterly, the Raw is
yeah. And then
original issues of Raw are on my holy grail list.
yeah, right. Yeah, good luck. I don't have those either. I
I,
think I
I
have one or two.
I am blessed that I have their, it was, I think it was one of the last things they published, their uh Exquisite Corpse.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
The three panels
Yeah.
from each. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
copy of that because
Um,
Bob Sikoriak's become a friend. So I discovered it the first time he was on, and I'm like, oh my God, that looks amazing. And I was
yeah.
so like all over it that my co-host Tyler tracked one down and gave it to me for Christmas. So I have.
And Bob was a regular presence in that scene
Yeah.
at the
Oh
time.
yeah.
And then really for me, it was like I think the two guys that I really just kind of fell in love with, like almost from the moment I first saw their work, was Dan Clowes and Chester Brown.
They
Yummy
have come up.
Fur
They have
and
come up
eight.
on this show from time to time.
Yeah. And then from there, like it was just like, okay, okay, this is the stuff. This is the shit
Yeah.
that I like. And then it was like by that point, Love and Rockets had already been going a little while.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
remember.
because they started before you were working in the store. They started in
That's right.
82.
That's right. But then, you start to go
We have
back
a
and
Love and Rockets book club. We're 70 some odd episodes into it because we go issue by issue. I
really?
know,
Is that
Mike.
right?
We do. We do. Yeah.
Holy
And
shit.
actually, it's one of the coolest things ever because in issue 17, there was a letter from a woman named Maria Pena who described herself as a budding cartoonist, and it was a wonderful letter. And she talked a little bit about how she had a comic coming out, and she used both her first and last name and put herself in Australia. So I'm like, I'm going to see if I can find her comic. I didn't find her comic, but I found Maria. So
Huh.
Maria first guested on the show, just as like you are right now, but we hit it off so much that she joined the book club.
All right.
So because of the letters page and Love and Rockets, I regularly talk to an El Salvadoran refugee in Australia or Malta, depending on which of her, though right now she's actually in El Salvador for Christmas. I could be talking to her tomorrow. I have to check in later today to see if we're on.
That's awesome. The single greatest thing about working in comics, I think, over 30 plus years is how much smaller it's made the world for me.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
terms of making friends, in terms of discovering art. Um, that really has been one of the most gratifying, you know, aspects of working in comics as long, getting to meet people from around the world who kind of share a common
I,
interest.
Yeah, I think it's like just small of enough of a common interest that people, when they find their tribe, they really want to like hold on to them because they
Mhm.
don't necessarily have them locally. Well, just big enough of a common interest to really wind up with a, I mean, I
Yeah.
laugh. Everybody talks about how it gets older and with good reason, harder and harder to make friends the older you get, right?
Mhm.
But for me, I've made more friends in my 40s than I did at any other time in my life just because I started this podcast
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
like have
I could
become
see
more
that being
wired into the comics community,
right.
you know, um, because comics people like to talk comics, and then we discover we like baseball too,
That's
and
right.
there's all sorts of stuff like that. Um, yeah, so Dan Clowes and Chester Brown, the Caitlin McGurk is a big Chester Brown fan too.
Yeah, I can believe that. Caitlin's
Yeah,
a good friend and she's got great taste. Um,
yeah,
so I would,
yeah.
even though she's a little younger, I would expect she's also a scholar and she knows her shit. So I'm not surprised.
Well, but she actually listed as what's the why am I drawing a blank on the book? I hadn't read it when she talked about it. One
Ed
of
the
his
Happy
early
Clown,
no.
I Never Liked You.
I Never Liked You.
Okay.
Was literally one of the first books that really got her into, oh, I like comics.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like those comics like kept me from, there's so many of us who read comics, into high school and then just kind of fall by the wayside. And those are the comics that kept me from falling by the wayside and
Yeah.
maintaining an interest when I could have easily lost it. Because like I have to admit, I can't even read like most mainstream comics anymore. I mean, I try to. I'll be attracted like visually by something, and um, they just they just don't do much of anything for me anymore. And
I've
it's
become
those.
pickier and pickier. Um,
I just read the Absolute Martian Manhunter. Um,
oh, I love that book.
the artwork's phenomenal. Javier Rodriguez is
Yeah.
really, I think, one of the great, mainstream artists working today. It's just his sense of page composition and also
Yeah.
color. His visual imagination is incredibly rich and sophisticated. Um, and I kind of liked it, but I also just like I really just find myself lingering on the artwork and and
Right.
and and I'll go like 5 pages and realize like I almost didn't even really read it. I was just kind of
Right.
looking at it and then have to go back and um
Though I do have to give some major props to Dennis Camp, the writer, if only because the other most visually stunning non doesn't feel like a mainstream comic on the stands right now is Assorted Crisis Events, which is also his writing
yeah, I
with
don't know that at all.
our artist is Eric Zawinski.
Hmm.
Um, but like it too just plays with the medium right and left,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, they're
just
they're they're almost kind of to an almost kind of meta
right,
degree. I guess that's like descending from, Alan Moore and Grant Morrison mostly.
right.
But yeah, I mean, but I see like guys like him who I think is really, really talented, or Trad Moore is another one. Like I'll pick up anything he does because I just think he's such an interesting artist. But I have to say, like most of the time I just sort of wish they were just doing their own thing, something that wasn't tethered to a intellectual property. And that's just a
Well,
personal
and that I
bias.
get. I mean, assorted. This is why between the two, I prefer Assorted Crisis Events because that's the creator owned one. Um, but I get that because I mean, eh, it always feels like there's a little bit more. Oh, he did cover Homesick Pilots. Um, I'm sorry, I just started looking at Tradmore art. Um,
He's a really interesting cartoonist.
he is. I'm digging it. Um, but yeah, no, it's a mixture of more tied to because you're more tied to a property, you often have certain restrictions on you. And I mean, even if you're given a wide berth, you know, you didn't design the character, so there's that restriction, I guess.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Though,
I didn't come here to talk shit about mainstream comics
no,
or anything, but
I'm
like,
not trying to talk shit about them. I'm trying to talk philosophically about them,
yeah,
Eric.
yeah, they're like, yeah,
I mean, because it is also one of the things that makes Martian Manhunter really special is that I don't think I've ever, even in the absolute line, which is reimagining heroes, you know, it stands out as like a completely different character design than I've ever like. It's still green. It's got that in
oh
common.
well, I would actually I it is inspired by um I think it's Mark Badger's interpretation of the character.
Okay.
And I don't even remember what the series was, but I think it would have been in the 80s. But there was a kind of reboot of that character drawn by Mark Badger, and he brought in this like really abstract, almost kind of psychedelic look to
I'm
it.
seeing it. I'm seeing it.
And
But it still has two eyes.
yeah, right. But that's where that that abstracted
Yeah.
version of the green guy comes from.
No, I
Um,
totally see that.
but yeah, anyway, I mean, like, I feel
And
like,
he did actually do the Martian Manhunter series in
yeah, like I said, I
in
can't remember
movies.
what was it, a Martian Manhunter series?
Yeah,
I can't even
it
remember,
was
but
technically Martian Manhunter Volume 2.
I remember being kind of drawn to that when it came out because it was just so different looking. But anyway, like, yeah, I can't really like I can't really imagine like if you were a writer that any great kind of concept or idea that you might have that could be applied to say Batman at this point wouldn't be better served just being its own thing and
Hmm.
not Like
I
why
mean,
does the world need another Batman story? I have no idea.
I don't know why the world needs another Batman story, but
Mm.
it's the fact that the world needs another Batman story that they wind up getting made. Um, because I've heard two. I mean, I talk to tons of creators and a lot of them in the mainstream, and the two things that I'll hear, even from people who aren't in love with superheroes about why they'll tell stories there are twofold. First, sometimes coming up with the character is the hardest part. So if they've got a character to play with, it's easier for them to tell a story than, you know. And second, and tied to that, it's a business and they have rent to pay and
Well,
insurance to pay for and like it's a quick steady paycheck rather than
that's 100% true, and that's why I don't begrudge anybody who does
right.
it,
No, no,
for
no,
sure.
no. And I think it's also why you get brilliance because like they're honing those skills. I mean, I don't know if I buy as strongly into the idea that they build their name and it actually crosses over. Unfortunately, I think that too many superhero comics readers don't really know who's making their comics.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but it does give them a a trial by fire in terms of honing their skills, in terms of getting used to deadlines, and in terms of deciding between good storytelling and beautiful pages and like there's so much that goes into comics that you can only really learn by doing comics
Hmm.
um that like if you're lucky enough to be in a situation where you can learn to do it and get paid for it rather than learn to do it and hope to sell it at a table at a teeny tiny con in a shopping mall on a Sunday afternoon in December. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I like that it exists for that. But yeah, no, I mean, I've noticed perhaps even more since I started the podcast and try to read tons of stuff. I find myself even more commonly eschewing any licensed title until I've already heard good things about it, unless it's by a very select group of people that it's like, oh, no, they're going to knock this out of the park. The fact that they're doing this means that they had a story to tell, not that they just needed the paycheck. They're happy to
Yeah.
get the paycheck, but like that sort of thing. Um, yeah, I'm sorry, just being weirdly philosophical. Let's get back to Fantagraphics books. Talk to me about uh you said that like each of the editorial people have brought in their own sensibilities and whatnot. Talk to me about what are the Eric Reynolds sensibilities? What books at Fantagraphics are there because you saw them and went, "Ooh, let's do this."
Well, I don't want to, you
Yeah, I
know,
was about to say without let me rephrase because I've talked to Paul Levitz a couple of times, and he's pointed out that when you're in a certain position, like saying this is cool makes it suddenly like make people
well, no,
think differently.
I more just like want to say, like, I don't want to, like take, claim credit for discovering anything. A lot of the stuff that we publish is stuff, or a lot of the artists that we publish are artists who were already working before we
Yeah.
published them
Oh
and
yeah.
already doing good work, and
Hmm.
and we just sort of recognized it as such and took a
I
chance
mean,
on them.
I finally have a stronger connection with Fantagraphics because you guys put out the hardcover Santos sisters.
Yeah, and that was, that's sort of a great example. They were
Hmm.
already doing the comics with Floating World. And Floating World, if you don't know, is a incredible
Yep.
retail shop in Portland, Oregon, and also a
Well,
great.
and they'd actually started doing the books all by themselves, but then
That's right.
Floating World said, "Hey,
That's right. That's right. They did. I think at least the first issue or two by themselves before they
Hmm.
connected with Floating World. And
I remember
so
there being a little bit of a snafu when like the second printing popped up on Lunar, and everybody's like, "Well, what about the first printing?" And they're like, "The first printing was 400 copies. They're gone."
that's funny. But so I was already aware of the series because I just, I pay attention to everything that Floating World does. And so I was already a fan before we started publishing it. And I suppose that's true of, a lot of the stuff that I acquire for the company. But I think, to answer your question, like I tend to gravitate towards more the more contemporary stuff. Um, the more the new work that just kind of excites me and that I just respond to for whatever reason. And it can be for a variety of reasons. It could be for the art, it could be for the subject matter. But like I said, pretty much everything that we publish is acquired either by myself or Gary. Um, and then also these days, Conrad Groth, Gary's son, also acquires a number of books that we publish. And each of us have our own taste and instincts. And um, yeah, and I think we're pretty good at it.
I
That's
think
like the
so.
closest I think I'd like to get to like hubris is like I think I've been doing it long enough that I know that I have confidence in our taste, and in our instincts on that front.
So, 50 years of Fantagraphics. I know that I'm trying to see if there's any official press release. I know that you're doing facsimile editions for
Yeah,
the first time.
I don't think we've put out any kind of official press release. We've done
Okay.
some logo branding stuff, and we've got some things cooking in terms of these facsimile editions.
Well, is there anything cool that you can tell me beyond the facsimile editions, which are definitely, I mean, I go back and forth on how much I like the facsimile editions. I love them for those books that are actually worth reading that are too expensive for people to buy. So
Right.
like love so like you guys doing facsimile editions are is like kind of amazing. I would love facsimile editions of say Raw magazine.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
there are certain things that I wish were never out of print.
Yeah, well, that's sort of where I was coming from when I wanted to start doing these. I go to the comic shop and I see like, a random issue of Marvel Team Up from 1978 that they've done a facsimile edition of, and I don't really understand it. I'm like, who's buying this? Like what's and but then I also thought about how when I first started getting into comics, there were certain comics, and R. Chrome's a great example. There were certain comics of his that were like in print for, by the time I discovered them, they'd been in print for 20 years or at least 15
Right.
years.
Right.
And you could always you there are still to this day. I was in Victoria, British Columbia this weekend and went to a great comic shop, Legends, owned by Gareth Gowden. And he had a bunch of undergrounds. I'm a big fan of underground comics, and he had multiple copies of R. Crumb's People's Comics, which was just a single issue comic that Crumb did in the early 70s, I think, early to mid 70s. And it's one of those comics you can just sort of still find because it probably went through multiple printings, issues of Zap that the comic book format is the perfect delivery device for that work. Um, and so I just thought like, I wonder if this would fly. Like if we did, an 8 Ball #1 and 11 Rockets #1, like would there be an audience in 2026 for them? And I really don't know. I mean, time will tell, but I just loved the idea of actually doing single issues that I felt like sort of warranted, being in that, being re-released in that original format because I saw so many of them at the comic shop that I just kind of didn't quite understand, like, why'd they choose this one, you know? And I don't even mean that critically. I was like
No,
really
no, I think
baffled by it.
there are a lot of us who look at them
You know,
that
like
way.
why a random issue of Secret Wars or something. I don't know.
Well, they actually did all of Secret Wars, to be
Okay,
fair.
fair enough. I
Um,
didn't know that.
yeah, they did do all of Secret Wars. I didn't buy them because I actually have three sets of the original. The first comic I ever remember buying, I was 4 years old, was Secret Wars #1, and it happened because I'd been going back and forth. I had both World's Finest because it had Batman and Superman, and a Marvel team up because it had Spider-Man and whoever in my hands, and I couldn't decide between the two of them. And then up by the register was Secret Wars, and it had all the heroes, and it
Sure.
cost like 25 cents more, so I had to beg and plead, but more heroes meant better to me at that age, and I won. I think I had to give up a little bit of candy at the because they're in Wheaton, Illinois. Um, there is still a store called the Popcorn Shop that is literally maybe 2 feet wider than its door. So it's just like this hallway between stores. In fact, there's bricks on either side, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of those like they connected the buildings on the street by making and now I guess the cheapest candy is like at least a nickel, but at the time like half the candy in the jars was like a penny a piece. And the expensive candy was a nickel. So you could go in with like 25 cents, 50 cents and fill a bag. So my dad and I used to walk downtown to go to the comic shop and the popcorn shop. And I think I'd had 50 cents to spend at the comic or at the popcorn shop that I turned into 25 cents in order to get Secret Wars #1. Um,
It's funny.
as
I
my
always I always gravitated toward the teen books too as a little kid.
Yeah,
Because
I
and I
mean,
think and it speaks to like why what I do love about the genre of superhero comics, which is just the colorful costumes. And um I was always I looking back, I realized like I really was like just responding visually in a very like visceral way to the designs and the colors as much as I was the stories, you know, I just kind of
right.
got a charge from the way they looked, and I still do. That's like the thing, you know, I still love Jack Kirby. I could care less about reading a Jack Kirby comic, but I've got, you know, like
We have
two
a
whole bookshelves of Jack Kirby comics here on
yeah,
my shelves that I
we
just
have
like to look at.
we have a Jack Kirby Fourth World book club that we're nearing the end of his fourth world. We've been going month by month. We've been reading them as they came out, and I can attest um, that you're not wrong to care less about reading a Jack Kirby comic. There are things that could be amazing,
Yeah,
uh,
right, right. No, there's
but the art
concepts
is
in there, and
always right.
yeah, but the just the punch that they pack, you know, is in a visually is just, you know, still something that I get a real charge from. And
Yeah.
it's why I still have so many Jack Kirby books on my shelf.
Um,
and it's why I can enjoy, you know, Jack Kirby and Robert Crumb. Um,
yeah. Um, you brought up Robert Crumb and like I'm gonna preview to or this weekend's recording. One of my favorite single issues of the year was what is it? Paranoia,
Tales of Paranoia.
Toys of Paranoia by Robert Crumb. Um, but what I couldn't figure out, and I don't know if I even want you to answer this question. One of the reasons it was my favorite single issues of the year is I couldn't figure out if Crumb has gone crazy or if it was brilliant satire. And if he's gone crazy, I don't know if I want to know.
Well,
And if it was brilliant satire, it was really brilliant and subtle satire.
I mean, I
And if
guess
he has gone crazy, I think there's like something inkling in the back of his head that like knows it.
there's a self-awareness to Crumb
Yeah.
that you can't deny.
Right.
And that shows in that comic because he espouses, some points of view that I think it's pretty easy to say that most of us, most of my like-minded peers don't agree with at all. But
Well,
but the fact
since
that he
I'm
can make you read it
yeah,
and consider,
since I'm an educator and a lot of it is about vaccines, I will say people who understand science at all don't agree with
sure, I agree.
and
I'm
and are hugely dangerous. I just you don't have to because he's worked for you, but I need to make clear vaccines safe. I'm autistic. They didn't cause my autism. My autism isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, right. No, I'm with you 100%. But it does, but I love that comic in its own
Yeah, I did
way.
too.
Um,
I was sometimes
and
uncomfortable loving that comic,
for sure, for sure. But he is such a
but that was
natural
part of its
enter
brilliance.
he's a natural entertainer, which is kind of
Yeah.
funny to say about someone who's such a lifelong iconoclast. But he has such great instincts as a storyteller that he somehow pulls it off. And it's been, I've had this conversation with a few people, and it's kind of funny because like almost to, I don't think I've heard anybody tell me that they dislike that comic. And I talk to a lot of cartoonists, and we're all just kind of like, oh my God, he's still
No,
got it.
I've even read a handful of reviews that were very upset about the position of the comic, but if you actually read the review, you could see that they had a grudging respect for the way it was done. It's like I don't want to like this comic more than I don't like this comic.
I keep telling myself, imagine how boring it would be if he had like totally sensible, agreeable opinions on everything. And I think you could draw that line through all of his work,
Oh,
whether
absolutely.
he's made a career of, making people uncomfortable by confronting very uncomfortable truths about people and about society. And I don't think this is all that different. And I don't think
No.
he's gone crazy. I think he can harbor, views different from my own without necessarily having to label him as crazy. Um,
And that wasn't necessarily the best
no,
terminology
no,
on
but I
my
know what you
part. I
mean.
just yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's fair because he brings it up himself. I mean, I think it even says like on the cover,
Right.
it's something like I'm paraphrasing, but it's something to the effect of like, is he a is he a truth teller or a crazy person?
Right.
Um, he knows that the jury is out.
Well, I mean I think where it wound up both attracting me because it humani I mean because one of the great values of it is it humanizes a lot of people that people of our political and academic bent tend to um diminish in ways that if you were doing it because of their gender or their color or anything like that, we'd be absolutely appalled, but yet we're able to allow it because of a dumb position that they hold or whatever. Um, so like to be able to be forced to be put into the position of, oh, this isn't a bad person. I mean, not just from my thoughts on Crumb to begin with, but like the way the book is portrayed. Okay, no, this isn't a person who's inherently reprehensible. I just
Hardly.
really, really disagree with him on
Yeah, yeah.
this. Had its own uh, really uh, strong value. Um, but for me, one of the things that made it even more uncomfortable than most crumb is like most crumb, I feel like the um most crumb, I feel like the things he's pushing against are things that have to do with societal mores regarding what's essentially personal beliefs or decisions. Whereas in this one it's like no, if too many people like South Carolina has a measles epidemic right now.
Mhm.
you know this is not a societal more that affects individuals. This is a societal more for society. And that just it's always that weird. I mean, just in general, that's the balance of freedom.
Mhm.
Freedom is the ability to do the things that you want to do and whatnot, but nobody argues that that crosses to murder.
Right.
Oh, I want to be free to kill you, and we're the land of the free, so unless you can kill me first, I should be allowed to. I mean, I guess there are some Second Amendment people who are very close to that at this point. But
Right.
um so yeah, no, I thought it was a brilliant book. I mean, again, without asking you to dish any dirt or anything, like was there any fear at Fantagraphics putting, I mean, you knew what was in it ahead of time. You knew the
No fear.
possibility.
No, no fear. Partly
Okay.
because, you know, I was so excited to just read it. And when I did,
Right.
I was so, I was just so excited that he did a new book for the first time in like 15 years or more.
Right.
And that he still had it, you know? I mean, I would almost argue that I think his drawing has gotten better. I mean,
I think it has.
there are panels in that book that I can't believe, he drew in 2025 because they're equal to anything he's ever done. And so if I could
I
get that,
actually, I mean, from my perspective, it felt like he slowed down.
I don't know. I don't know,
I don't know either, but it felt like he took all of those tools and gifts that he's had forever and allowed himself to breathe while making the comic.
yeah,
And maybe
maybe.
that's just because it had been 15 years that I assumed that some, but that to me was the biggest difference is the type of stuff that I'm used to seeing because somebody's working on a tight deadline or whatnot, and I just got to get through this. That didn't feel like felt like each page was crafted.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Crumb's always
Yeah,
been kind of he's been both a fast artist, but a patient artist at the same time.
right.
He's obsessive, so he gets the work in, but I don't think I've ever read anything he's ever done that I felt like he rushed. I feel like
No,
he knows the pace he needs to work at for the work to be what he wants it to be. And I don't think there's anybody who's really ever been any better at it. And so to go back to your question about whether there was any fear about putting it out, any repercussions, um, surprisingly, there really wasn't, because I understand the question. It's not a totally unfair question, but I know for myself and for Gary and other people in the office, we just had the confidence to know that if we were as excited about this, even though, I'm a fully vaccinated, educated adult,
right.
um, I, I don't listen to Joe Rogan uh, or ascribe to some of the conspiracies that Crumb puts in there, but that's okay. I don't see I mean, I guess on one level he must have meant it as a kind of polemic, um, or he wouldn't have done it. Like he had opinions that he wanted to get across. But like I said, I also feel like he's also an entertainer, and he found a way for his obsessions on that front to work for an audience, regardless of who the audience was, in the same way that his other kind of transgressive impulses in his younger days, and other less than popular points of view that he's held his entire career.
Right.
He's been able to get across. And you have to bear in mind that this is a guy who has been so he's been an iconoclast and an anti-authoritarian for his whole life, and he came by it extremely honestly. If you've read like Dan Nadell's recent bio of the man, it comes across very clearly. He sort of earned his um his inherent suspicion of the world. He's earned it very he's come by it very honestly. And whether it's the Vietnam War, or um the war on drugs, up through today, and vaccines, like it, I don't feel like he's crazy in Tales of Paranoia, because I feel like it completely reinforces everything that you already knew about him, even if in this particular case I don't agree with him as much as I might have on other
Right.
other it's really quite masterful,
Uh,
because can you imagine if Steve Ditko did a
oh God.
anti-vax comic? It would
Well,
be
and
completely unreadable.
and I wasn't quite going to go there, but I was going to ask kind of a similar itch question. Um, and this might touch on the hubris that you don't want to show any of, but how much do you think Fantagraphics publishing it versus some fly by night, or what? I mean, there are a handful of other publishers that I could see publishing it that would have the same gravitas. How much do you think your publishing it contributes to the fact that it's given a great deal of thought rather than just the knee jerk, oh, it's anti-vax,
Well,
get it away from me?
I think I can answer that in a way that is sincere. I think the greatest thing that we were able to do for that comic was put a $6 price tag on it and publish 15,000 copies, and just get it out there as a comic book. I think if anybody else had done it, it would have been a $15 book, with a much smaller run, a little more collector oriented. And that's really, I think, one of the great things about that book is that it's just like a mass market comic book. Uh,
You're doing a studio edition of Carl Barks,
we're doing two, actually.
are you? I have the diamond edition just because I wanted the bigger pages, but the studio edition also looks. I'm flipping through some of the stuff that's already been announced for this year right now. One of the things I noticed, and I don't know who gets to be involved in this, but I'm looking. A lot of the Peanuts library is being re reprinted, going back to print, becoming available again.
Yeah.
And I'm just going through some of I mean, aside from Seth being involved in almost all of them, you've got
All
Al
of the
Roker,
hardcovers.
yeah, Al Roker, Robert Smigel, Billie Jean King,
Barack
Kristen
Obama.
Chenoweth, John Waters.
You're bearing
Uh,
the lead, Barack Obama.
well, I just hadn't gotten that far. I'm going up. Whoopi Goldberg, Jonathan Franzen, Matt Groening, Garrison Keillor. And see, the Barack Obama one must not be among the ones being reprinted this year.
It was the second to last volume.
Okay, but like who gets to reach out to those people? What experience? I mean,
Most of those were Gary, um,
okay,
or an assistant in our office just trying to navigate, publicists and
right.
whatnot. But it was a lot of fun. We started publishing the Complete Peanuts around 2004, I want to say.
Another thing that I would love to have all of, but there are too many. One
There's
day. I mean,
there's 26.
the
It can be
problem is
done.
one, yeah, but for me with the peanuts, with the EC, with that sort, it's one part money, but it's like three parts. My wife going, where are you gonna put them?
Yeah, sure. I get it. I get it. It was really fun when we started the Complete Peanuts to just brainstorm who would be good introduction writers. And I do think that's one of the things that we brought to the table, in that list of names you just read. We cast a wider net than just, I don't know, another cartoonist or what
Right.
have you. We tried to think of people who had, a cultural either insight or a cultural currency that was worthy of Charles Schulz, his work. I mean, Schulz is like he's to my mind he's the Beatles of comics. He's the guy that everybody knows, and for the most part everybody gives credit to and likes. It's not
Yeah,
polarized, not
if they don't,
polarizing.
yeah, if
And
they
if you
don't love
don't
them, they
like it,
respect them. Right.
and if you don't like it, it almost comes off as a little bit of a contrarian, knee-jerk
Well, I
position.
mean, just with the Beatles thing, I know a handful of people that will say, I don't like the Beatles, but none of them will say that the Beatles are bad or that they don't understand. In fact, they will often say, I know this is an unpopular opinion and I respect their talent, but I don't like the Beatles. They're
Right.
just not my cup of tea. It's like they're aware that not only is it so unpopular of opinion that they need to prep you for it, but that like it's earned that status, not just flavor of the week.
But it's so unimpeachably great to my mind, his work, that it is like the Beatles. And it's the kind of thing, like, you ever watch like a Beatles documentary or something, and all the talking heads talking about how great the Beatles are, none of them are as great as the Beatles. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you can't, it's almost impossible to find someone who can speak with an authority on the subject that is up to the task of living up to that reputation that's already there. And I think Schultz is kind of like that. He's just, what could another cartoonist say about, I mean, I shouldn't say that, because I think, there's a generation of cartoonists like Seth and Chris Ware and Ivan Brunetti and Dan Clowes and Art Spiegelman, um, who have done a tremendous job of rehabilitating Schultz's reputation. There was a time where Schultz was like, sort of the way people perceived Paul McCartney in the 80s as being, sort of lacking a certain amount of depth or gravitas or whatever, sort of started being taken for granted a little bit. And I think if there's anything I hope the Complete Peanuts accomplished, it was to really, um, just poo-poo that, that train of thought, because it really is, one of the unimpeachably great bodies of work in the history of the
Oh,
medium.
absolutely.
Like, I don't even
Absolutely.
think you could argue otherwise, whether you personally really respond to it or not.
Right. Um, as I'm going through upcoming books, there are a couple I want to talk about first. I think this is the first, yep, complete collection. I think the first time of Joe Matt's Peep Show.
Oh yeah, I've been working on that just this week. It's a project very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah,
Um,
I know that you guys did the final Peep Show.
we
Had you
did,
done
yeah.
earlier ones as well, or
No, we the only one
okay,
we published was the posthumous 15th issue
right.
that yeah, that came out after he passed away. But it was something that I talked to Joe about doing before he died, about doing the complete peep show, and we just kind of never got around to it. And I'm super excited to do it. I've kind of made it my mission a little bit to collect, and maybe you know, canonize some of the great works of the 90s and 80s that I feel like really defined my aesthetic points of view. Um, and a lot of that is, stuff that Fantagraphics published, but also, extends to someone like Joe, who, even though Fantagraphics didn't publish Peep Show, he was an artist who was just working in a mode of comics and cartooning that, he could have easily have been a Fantagraphics artist. He just happened to land at Drawn and Quarterly. Um, so I've been working on that collection with my friend Sammy Harcum, the cartoonist. Sammy was basically tasked with kind of sorting through Joe's archives from the Matt family, particularly Joe's sister Monica. And so we've been kind of slowly chipping away at it for over a year now, and it's just about to go to press and come out this summer. And I'm super excited about it. It's a complete collection of all 15 issues. It's got a fantastic afterword by Diana Schutz, the longtime comics editor and who was a close personal friend of Joe's. Um,
Diana Schutz was one of the first editorial names that caught my eye, and I
yeah,
started paying real attention
Diane
to.
Diana's one of the great pros, uh, great non-cartoonist figures in the history of American comics over the last 50 years or so. She's wonderful. And so she wrote a great piece for it. We kind of painstakingly restored the single issues because um, there were no digital files for most of the single issues. They predated digital files.
Right.
Drawn and Quarterly was very accommodating in terms of letting us have access to their files, but they only had the graphic novel collections, The Poor Bastard and Fairweather, um, and the other one that Joe's sort of a obsessive futzer, is how I would put it. He routinely would tweak things for the collections, whether it was like re-inking something that he didn't like, or changing a reference to a band that he thought was like too in the moment, wanted something that would like maybe, resonate a little bit more 10 years from now or whatever, 10 years from then. Um, Changing color, the duotone color palette. So we basically took all of John Quarterly's book files and then physical copies of the single issues and and restored everything. There was something on virtually every single page that needed to be sort of reverted back to its original. And we did this mostly because Joe Joe more or less regretted most of the changes that he made for the book collections. He expressed that to to a lot of friends over the years that he would, I think he felt like he was almost in a desire to be taken more seriously, would kind of tweak things and not follow his original instinct. And so we're restoring them all, and it's going to be a big fat
I am
450 page brick.
very much looking forward to it. Currently listed as on sale July 14th.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's going to be going. We just got a dummy of the book in from the printer
Yeah.
uh, that I looked at on Wednesday.
All right. This one just caught my attention today, even though it's coming. Oh, okay. It's this one's a reprint. Um, but just caught my attention today. I um didn't know of this book, but my friend Dennis Kitchen has been sending me various uh 3D stuff recently. So
Mm-hmm.
when I saw Frank in the Third Dimension, like A, cool, but B, like, is there some um hidden history of like underground people and doing really cool 3D stuff that I just somehow missed?
Yes, yes, there is.
Okay.
I mean,
Talk to me about it.
and I'm not sure I'm the expert to really detail it for you, but there's a long tradition of 3D comics that goes back to the mid 20th century. In the heyday of the original kind of 3D in terms of movies and
Right.
kind of being kind of a pop phenomenon. I'd say in the 50s. And so as you had, 3D movies coming out, publishers also got on the bandwagon and published a lot of 3D comics. And then there was this dude named Ray Zone who um, I'm not familiar enough with the process, but he kind of dialed in on a process for doing 3D printing with the traditional red and blue layers. And he was an underground guy. He was like an underground
Okay.
comics guy. And so, Dennis Kitchen actually published a few 3D comics in the probably 80s.
This I know.
Yeah. And there,
And
and there,
has recently made posters.
yeah. And so there was a little bit of a like 3D renaissance in the 80s that I think was probably, I mean, it was definitely the result of Ray Zone's work. And he was doing 3D packaging for a number of different publishers, including Dennis. There was a Bob Burden, Art Adams Gumby comic, I think, in 3D in the 80s. There were some more like bottom of the barrel kind of just crass attempts to grab old public domain comics and put them in 3D and repackage them. And so it had a little bit of a bubble that burst. And then so I think there's a certain nostalgia value to guys like Dennis's age and Jim Woodring's age, who are both a little bit older than me. But it also extends down to people as young as me who kind of went through that little wave of them in the 80s. Um,
Right.
and then you've got Ray Zone passed away, unfortunately, probably quite a while ago, at least a decade ago. But there are a couple of other people, like I don't know if they're proteges of his or just, kind of students from afar. But there's a fellow named Charles Barnard and a couple of others who have kind of perfected the technique. And so the work that Dennis has been doing, which hasn't been published, but it sounds like you've seen some, and I've seen some as well. He's shared some of it with me. And then also this Jim Woodring Frank in the 3D book. It's traditional red blue glasses 3D, but it's the best I've ever seen. Like
Yeah.
it's just so fucking good.
I mean, mostly what he sent me is initially actually it started with one of my coworkers after seeing my copy way back in the day. Um, Kitchen Sink had done like it was literally for it was I guess I don't have it nearby, but it was commissioned by the Wisconsin Board of Education,
Hmm.
and it was a comic on essentially money management.
Okay.
that was given to like every senior in all of the state, that sort of thing. But he still has some available. So I'd ordered one, and like we were looking at it and we're like, for our, yeah, because I work special ed for our kids going through personal finance, this actually teaches it better than half of the textbooks we have. So we were showing it, and one of my coworkers ordered it, and when I sent him a message say, "Hey, so and so's, be nice to her." One of the things that he sent out was this 3D print of I forget what, but she's going nuts with it, and I'm like, "Oh wow!" And the next thing I know, I get this big tube of posters in the mail with like 50 pairs of 3D glasses. It's like, yeah, if any of your kids want them, whatever.
That's awesome. And kids love
But
them.
oh yeah. But what I appreciated so much is I'm used to a certain 3D where it's like, oh, okay, it comes off the page. Woohoo. Um, but like so much of this, like the art was built around being 3D. It
Yeah,
was
right.
stuff that looked kind of interesting before you put the glasses on, but when the glasses were put on, it's like, oh my God, this is cool. And
Hmm.
not just cool because it comes off the page, but because it like changes what I'm looking
Yeah,
at.
and it wasn't retroactively applied to work that was, created
Right,
out of that.
right. There's a, there I wound up giving one to my brother, and I just realized I have a perfect spot on my wall that I should put it because I have one for me too. There was like a little Nemo pastiche that he did that like
Well,
it's like a full page Nemo, but with
you
yeah.
should get this Jim Woodring book. It sounds like
Oh
it would
no,
be right up your
it's
alley.
very much immediately got added to the list of things that I will definitely be picking up this year, unless you want to have Tucker send me a copy. I mean, whatever works. I made the mistake of telling him that I'm more than happy with PDFs, and I don't get as many physical copies anymore.
Yeah,
And it's like, is there a way to say this one I'd like physically?
never hurts to ask, right?
That's true. Um, just because one of our connections is baseball, I noticed that the Atlas Comics Library number 10 is sports action.
Yeah,
Um, Jackie Robinson is immediately put out, though it also Koi Matsai, 106 home runs in one
yeah.
season. This is
I
this is one that I didn't know already.
I didn't work on that book at all, but I was
Okay.
flipping through a PDF of it probably.
Oh, Hack Wilson, I know.
Yeah, and it's basically like, short, well, biographical strips about sports legends at the time,
Hmm.
some of whom are still legends and some of whom guys like you and me don't remember. Even fairly
Well, I mean,
well-informed baseball fans like us.
most of the baseball ones will know, but
Hmm.
Koi Matsai, I don't. I must,
I
and I
presume there's
feel
also
bad.
some fictional stuff in there.
Yeah, that's
But but
always a possibility.
but my sense was that a lot of it were just sort of like short biographical, almost like the old kind of Ripley's Believe It or Not kind of strips about some amazing accomplishment or feat that these athletes accomplished.
It looks like that could actually be fiction, and that would make me feel better. Because like doing a search for Koi Matsai gets me things about sports action number 5, but nothing else. Because I'm just sitting there going, no, oh, in the Marvel fandom, it even has Koimatsai in parentheses or in quotes rather than um. So yeah, it could be a fictional character inspired by Babe Ruth.
I'd have to
Um,
ask I'd have to ask Michael Dean, who's the editor of those books.
yeah, just because like I'm sitting there going, I thought I knew the Japanese baseball home run record, and it's like 50 something, finally set by Well, I think it's been broken since Tuffy Rhodes said it, but like four different American players came close only to get walked in like every at bat from the time they tied the record until the end of the season before there was finally one that had enough games left and
Hmm.
somebody pitched to it.
That's funny.
Um, and the only reason that I think it was Tuffy Rhodes is because that would have caught my attention because Tuffy Rhodes' best major league game was opening day of 1994 for the Cubs, where he hit three home runs that I think were.
I don't even remember Tuffy Rhodes.
This is my point.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, his major league 590 major league at bats, a total of 13 home runs, even though he hit three on opening day 1994. Um,
And then went to
but
Japan and tore it up.
his time in Japan, um, yeah, in 13 seasons in Japan, he hit 286, 381, 559 slash line
Wow.
with 464 home runs,
Holy crap. Wow.
including 51 in 2003, 55, 2001, I think is the year that he. Ironically, the single season hit record in Japan was also broken by a former Cub. Matt Merton broke Ichiro's single season hit record.
Huh.
He was a guy that I really wish the Cubs had held on to.
I don't
But I
remember him
knew
either.
he had some good seasons and looked like he was going to be something. Um, but then they made their biggest free agents. I mean, after his first kind of breakout year, in 2006, he had a 297, 365, 444 slash line. Um, After having a better slash line in more limited time in 2005, but 2007 was the year that they signed Alfonso Soriano to play his position. Um, and still he was 281, 352, 438 in limited playing time in 2007, but then they traded him to the Rockies. Um, or no, he was traded to Oakland in the Dan Herron trade, and then eventually to the Rockies. He just kept getting traded places where he was the fourth outfielder,
Hmm.
which drove me up the wall because I'm sitting there going, this guy consistently has 350 or higher on base percentage, decent power, above average left fielder, average right fielder, um, not stolen base speed, but good base running speed. Like, how
Hmm.
is this guy not a regular somewhere? And then like he wound up in Japan, and what year was it that he hit? Where's my hits? I love baseball reference and Fangraphs. Yeah, 214 hits in 2010 to set the Japan League record, breaking Ichiro's record.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, but to with Tuffy Rhodes, him not sticking with the Cubs is less surprising because he was more of the he didn't stick anywhere. But Matt, I never understood how that happened. Um, the next book that really caught my attention on your upcoming slate. This was due out in April. I think final order cutoff just passed. I plugged the hell out of the final order cutoff. Don't worry. I didn't wait to talk about it until now. Theodora's Letters, an
Oh
enslaved
yeah.
woman's fight for family and freedom. This strikes me as the quintessential Fantagraphics book. It's uh it deals with like progressive history. It
Hmm.
deals It's a translation of uh
Brazilian work.
well, Brazilian work, yes, but I was just going to say in general of a renowned artist that's not renowned here.
Yes. Yeah.
So like you're bringing something that I mean, the biggest thing that I dislike about the fact that I grew up in an English speaking country is I feel like we get the least foreign literature.
I think that
English is
seems,
the last,
yeah.
English feels like the last language anything gets translated into. Like if you live in a Spanish speaking country, if you live in a Portuguese speaking country, even in China and Japan, probably a lesser extent Russia, there's a really good chance that anything great in English has been translated into your language.
Yeah.
The reverse is so rarely true.
I think that's true. And the history of comics is sort of a testament to that. The history of international comics. You've got there take a market like Brazil. Brazil has an incredibly rich tradition of comics, and it's got an incredibly vibrant scene right now.
Mhm.
Um,
One of
and
my favorite comic shop owners is a Brazilian expat,
oh yeah,
Chris
oh,
Cicada
Chris Sakara,
at
yeah, yeah,
Lion
yeah,
Soup. Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
She's fantastic, and you know, there's probably been three or four Brazilian cartoonists that have been translated into English over the past,
Right.
decade or more. I went to Brazil just a year ago, and just kind of got immersed in the scene. And there's so much good work. But I think the reason for what you were describing is that I think Americans are the most myopic of all
Oh,
cultures.
absolutely.
And
Followed closely by British.
yeah, probably. And so
I mean, we came by it honestly.
yeah. And even what has come over here, I mean, let's leave manga out of it for now because that's
Right.
really its own special thing. But um
Well, but I mean, even there, like it's such a small slice of what's available, and it's a kind
right,
of
that's
specific
true.
slice.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But I was going to say, historically in America, the stuff that we have gotten is just the cherry-picked works from the Franco-Belgian tradition of comics. And I
Right.
think that's mostly just due to the international popularity of things like Tintin and Asterisk and so even the and there's a lot of great masters in that tradition that that have been translated into English for a very good reason because they are masters. Um, but it's also very much related to the commerce of things and the fact like heavy metal is probably a big reason why a lot of that stuff ever got translated because when I first started in comics the conventional wisdom was basically that Americans didn't want to read anything but American comics. And I think
Right.
that was mostly true. And we kind of made it part of our mission to try to change that narrative a little bit. But even Fantagraphics, for the first 10, 20 years, really only dipped its toes into Franco-Belgian comics. And you can only know what you know. You can't know what you don't know. And it's taken an evolution of decades to get to the point where and the world's gotten smaller enough in terms of the internet and other things that we've been able to discover that there is these rich scenes in South America, in the Philippines or wherever, Australia, where you don't even
Hmm.
have to translate it.
No.
Um,
And also where sometimes you can find the English translations of things that hadn't, like I
Made it
recently
over here.
discovered, I recently discovered, I did my first um, email interview. Tucker set this up for me with Jason.
Okay.
Um, and this will be published in American Nature Presents #4, or
Okay,
at
cool.
least it'll start there. Um, but I had no idea that the Phantom was huge in Scandinavia.
Okay.
So much so that they had a long history of original Phantom comics in Scandinavia, long after it was a big deal here. That
Like
when
the
I
Disney
started looking
Ducks.
into it, right, when I started looking into it to try to figure out the only English translations you can find are in Australia.
That's funny. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so anyway, there's just yeah, Americans are not haven't traditionally been the most, progressive embracers of international scenes, but yeah, like back to your point, Marcelo De Salete, who did Teodora's Letters, he's a phenomenal contemporary Brazilian cartoonist who's he has won an Eisner Award, so he's not like
Yes,
completely
that
unknown over here, but
that's how I knew that he was known because it says Eisner Award winner.
Mhm. But
Um,
but it's
Eisner does have a couple of international categories that you can still be relatively unknown in the United States and win an
oh yeah,
Eisner.
yeah, that's absolutely true. Great cartoonist from Sweden, Moa Romanova won um, uh, Eisner for her first English translated work, Goblin Girl, that we published a few years ago, and
Yes, so good.
it was one of the that Eisner Award was like one of the best surprises I've had, like awards wise, in a while, because I didn't really expect it to win. It wasn't, a huge popular crowd pleaser of a book, even though I absolutely love it. And
I am a big fan. As the new one,
Buff Soul,
Buff Soul
yeah,
was fantastic.
yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, yeah, I don't forget quite how we got on that tangent, but
Well, Theodora's Letters,
yeah,
which also like just I mean, the fact that it's this uh, I mean, again, like the translation, particularly the Brazilian translation, makes it feel like a Fantagraphics book, but then it's also like an enslaved woman's fight for family and freedom. Um, and when you dig into it, we're looking at um, a different history of slavery than the U.S. history of slavery.
sure.
Um, you know, the and I can't come up with other examples immediately off the top of my head, but like the telling of history that's underappreciated, that that it is not strictly US or Eurocentric, also feels like a Fantagraphics thing.
Yes, I
And
would agree with that.
maybe it's just the way Beto uses um kind of fictionalized Central American history so often in Palomar
Mhm.
that makes me think that. But it does. It feels like it's part of a Fantagraphics thing to go, hey, there's this history out there that you didn't know.
Well, I
Um,
think Fantagraphics has always been pretty willfully political in its own in its own way, whether it's the way we approach the industry or the medium. Um, there's been a consistent focus on giving voice to voices that aren't have or haven't been well represented in American comic books. Our one of our Gary Groth founded the company, but soon after, he partnered up with Kim Thompson, who passed away, gosh, almost 12 and a half years ago now.
yeah.
But Kim was a military brat, basically, who grew up all over Europe and even a little bit in East Asia. And so he grew up with this kind of much broader view of comics than the average American, and he was I think really the, the first person to really dial in on it as part of Fantagraphics mission.
Well,
But
with the added bonus that he could
mm,
translate a lot of it himself, right?
well, that yes, 100%. And that's that's the hardest part about international comics is the overhead to do them is a lot more than a native language book because you have to pay a translator and you have to pay production artists to to redo the lettering, and you have to often buy files from the foreign publisher to work with, and so they're much trickier to to make a profit on. So when you can translate it all, when you're the editor and publisher and translator all yourself, and you're not paying yourself to do those things, it makes it a lot easier. And that's what Kim did. He did it as it was a pure labor of love for him. He was, he would have done all of that translation work that he did, and often did do it for free. He didn't pay himself to do it. He would save on that to help make it viable. But
Yeah.
anyway, like yeah, the what you're saying about the alternative, kind of histories, whether it's, of slavery as seen in Marcello's work, including his first
Right.
book, Run for It,
Right.
but also other
Also,
other
Angola Janga,
histories. Yeah.
Kingdom of Runaway Slaves.
But I think there is a an interest in our part um, to tell to have those stories told. There's a value in it.
Well, I'm just one of your sections, one of your genres is historical. I just noticed as I love that among your genres are both historical and funny animals. Um, and that one book is in both because you were the original publisher, and this might have been before actually, I'm pretty certain it was before your time of Usagi Yojimbo.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so before we get into like some of my favorite closing questions, two more books on the horizon that really caught my eye for similar reasons. The first is Corto Maltese. Um,
Hmm.
you're bringing back into print, which I appreciate a great deal because it's long been kind of on that holy grail of stuff that I hadn't read enough of that everybody says this is amazing, and it's like, great, I hear that it's amazing. Where do I get one?
Yeah, it's been had a kind of fits and starts history in
Um, so,
publishing.
so when this was put into um print, I was quite, or well, it's coming March
I
17th.
mean, yeah.
I'm reading it because Tucker was kind enough to send me an advance PDF, and for that matter, we'll be talking about it on our Pulp Blotter book club because when my other Pulp Blotter guys, who are also my Kirby guys, found out that I had one, they're like, "Oh, we want to read Corto Maltese." So, so you're going to get some advanced press for that soon.
Excellent.
But then the other one that you got advanced press for without even me knowing that you were getting advanced press for it, and we're gonna want to give you a lot more. Um, you've already released uh the Magnificent Adventure, The Perils of Giuseppe Bergman, but upcoming, and the one that really caught my eye and made me really, because I go back and forth on Manara. I love his art. I don't always love his material.
That's fair.
Um, when I love his material, I love it. So I like always want to try to figure out if I'm gonna love it.
Hmm.
But and preview for a question I'm going to be asking you in a few minutes. My um traditional closing question is tell me something you love, preferably a comic, but we don't have rules. Preferably storytelling, but again with the rules, but something that you love that not enough people around you have experienced and you want them to so you can talk to them about it. And when Paul Pope was on recently, he said Desiree, by Manara, which he also lamented was long out of print. And the next day I was able to send him a message going, yes, it's been long out of print, but it won't be for long because it looks like it's part of this, the Magnificent African Adventure, due out April 28th. So talk to me to what level you can about bringing the both of these like fantastic and tied together. I mean, even in the description of the Corto Maltese, it finishes up with as a side note, readers who enjoyed The Magnificent Adventure by Milo Manara and its book length search for HB will be quick to note that HP is in fact Hugo Pratt,
Right.
a beloved mentor of
That's funny.
Manara. Um, I don't know if these are ones that you were involved in or not, but like these are definitely a couple of examples of um, another thing that you talked about how Fantagraphics doesn't do a lot of the genres that you typically see in comics. And while that's true on one level, it's not true on another, which is like these are quintessential adventure comics. For that matter, one of another thing that Paul Pope turned me on to that he actually wrote the introduction to
Hmm.
for a Fantagraphics edition is old Roy Crane work.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, but
like,
those are traditional adventure comics. Um, but we're doing them because they're
oh,
masters of comic
that
art.
that's my point
That just
is that
happens to be
what you do
yeah.
is when there's the masterpieces of a genre, you're the most likely to go out and get them.
Yeah. Well, we
Um,
try to anyway, but yeah, I mean I
yes, you have
actually didn't.
some competition more now than you used to. There are a number of publishers going after
Mhm.
translated stuff
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely
now
true. That's great. And that's great
followed your
because there's more than enough to go around.
right,
In fact, like the one of the hardest parts of the job is passing on work that you really like.
right,
Because we just can't do everything. Um and that's never more true than on the translation front. You have to kind of choose your
right.
battles. We can only do so many a year. Um and there's so much more out there that in a perfect world I would love to do that I just can't. And so the more the merrier, in terms of the competition on that front. Um, but yeah, I actually didn't work on the Manara books or the Pratt books. Much probably like yourself, I'm very aware of their work and have come across it, over the years. I actually have a very similar, take on Manara as you, which is that, I was always sort of attracted to the drawing. I rarely was able to really find the proper entry point to actually read it. Um, Pratt, I had a little more um, background in. There were some NBM collections that were published in the
Right.
80s, and I think Dark Horse maybe in more recent years. And
Right.
so I come across it and always marveled at his skill, but I'm eager to really kind of sit down and take it all in as a larger body of work rather than just one particular, excerpted storyline.
And
Um,
I'm assuming with the Magnificent Adventure that there will be the third volume to have all of the Giuseppe Bergman. Um,
that
I
seems like
could
a
be
safe
wrong.
assumption.
Okay.
I actually don't know myself.
Well, that might mean that you don't have an answer to my next question, which is, do you know if there's plans to do more of the Corto Maltese?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
There is plans to do basically all of it if the market can bear it and we can
Well,
avoid
I'll do my
losing too
best.
much money.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
um, Dinky little podcast, though I do. I'm making my panel moderator debut at C2E2, so maybe
All right.
maybe that will make us a bigger podcast. Um, we'll
I like
see.
it.
I do too. Um, okay, so a couple of they've become my I now have two required closing questions. The first, and I'm really interested to hear yours because you've had comics experiences all around the world. Um, this is my entering my fifth year of doing this podcast, and I pinch myself on a regular basis at what my life has become, the people that I talk to regularly, not just on the air but off the air, the number of like conversational experiences that I have had that if you had told even 35-year-old me, but certainly 15-year-old me, hey, you're going to do this in your life, I would have gone, yeah, no. um but I've also discovered like everybody in comics has those surreal experiences, those things that
Hmm.
they're like, oh my God, I just did blank. So tell me one of your surreal experiences that never would have happened if you weren't immersed in the world of comics.
Oh man, I can think of a couple of things come to mind. Some more kind of comical than you know sort of walking amongst the
Yeah, there aren't
giants.
rules. There aren't
Um,
rules.
when I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting so many cartoonists that I really revere that I kind of won't even go there. But one of a couple of amazing memories. Um, it was probably 2002. Uh, I went to a comic convention in Granada, Spain, with Peter Bagg, who's a very good friend, and they had a big awards ceremony. It was, if you don't know Granada, it's near Malaga, in the south of
This is where I
Spain.
have to say I have been all the way to Toronto, and that's the extent of my international travel.
Okay, well, it's one of the, it's one of the older regions of Spain. It's a rich Moorish tradition. It's close to Gibraltar and Africa, northern Africa.
Okay.
It's a beautiful small city that's kind of built into the mountains. And we went to this very small convention. Pete has enjoyed a lot of success in Spain over the years. It's one of the more popular countries for his work. And they had an award ceremony that were invited to and went to. And it was in this beautiful old, well, it wasn't, it was a very modern amphitheater on this very old campus built into the mountains. And very prestigious looking auditorium with this gorgeous view looking out over all of Granada. Uh, and like I said, it was 2002, and we sit in our seats, and it's like it's one of those things like where it's so different from America. You've got like the mayor of Granada is there, and dignitaries from Spanish cultural groups, and
Yeah,
um, the
that
kind of
reminds me of the weirdest part of the whole Angoulême series or debacle this year was that like it was a major political event for the upcoming mayoral election. I'm sitting
yeah,
there going,
right.
this this is this is weird and cool.
So anyway, we're just going to this award ceremony. It's all in Spanish. We know we're not going to really understand anything, but what the hell? We're guests.
Right.
We're going to go take it in, and we sit down, and the MC, kind of starts. Beautiful stage, and all of a sudden, all chaos breaks loose from behind us. The doors to the auditorium burst open, and all of a sudden, there's screaming and yelling and gunfire. And we don't know what the fuck is going on. It's like, within a year of 9/11, and
Right.
people just start freaking out. And basically these armed rebels like storm the stage and literally proceed to tie up the MC on stage, like put his arms, tie up his wrists, and they start to corral other people from the crowd, including Peter Bagg, who's a special guest of the convention. And at this point, I think that one of our hosts like leaned in and told us, like, don't worry, you're going to be okay. But in the moment, it really was terrifying, and you had no idea what was
I'm
going
not a
on.
fan of gunfire.
No, it was crazy. And so, anyways, they hog tie all these guests up on stage together, like a
Right.
chattel. And who walks out on stage but Osama bin Laden, or of course a dead ringer for Osama bin Laden. And he proceeds to I can speak a little bit of Spanish, just enough to kind of
Right.
have an idea of what's going on. So he's he starts going on a rant against Western evil, the evils of capitalism, and the lack of morals of Western democracy, and blah 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 blah.
And you're sitting there going, you know that we work in comic books. Wait,
Yeah, and
what?
we're just we're just we're just sitting there going like, what in the fuck is going on? But
I mean,
wait,
except for the gun part, we pretty much agree with you, and,
but
we
wait, it
wouldn't
gets
know
it,
money if.
but it gets better. So he goes on this little spiel, and as he's doing this, he takes like the program of the event and he folds it into a paper airplane. And there's a little lectern, like a dais that is where the people are going to be reading the awards from, and it's these two columns with a little glass table and microphone on top
Right.
of it. And he's standing like maybe 5 feet away from it, preaching to the audience. And he folds his paper airplane up and tosses it at this little two-column dais, which suddenly
Right.
looks like the World Trade Center. And as the paper airplane hits it, it bursts into flames. I mean, this is like a high production fair. And from there, it only gets weirder. I should have prefaced this by saying that when he comes up on the stage, he's followed by two women in burqas who look like traditional Muslim, like his concubine or whatever.
Right.
And anyways, for the next half hour, they proceed to put on a full-on hardcore sex show. He disrobes, the women disrobe, and they proceed to, with Peter Bagg and the other guests right behind them on stage, all just looking, like, oh my
Tied
God,
up.
tied up. They proceed to put on a full-on hardcore sex show. And anyways, meanwhile, people are vacating in droves. Like, nobody has any idea what's going on. Very few people were aware of any of this was going to happen. It turned out that the organizer of the show um, basically had some axe to grind with the city, and this was he sort of saw the writing on the wall that that he maybe wasn't long for doing these conventions, and he put on like the greatest fuck you in the history of comics. Um, it was and this was like a 5-star, venue. It was a classy affair all the way around. Anyways, to this day, it's like, Peter and myself and my friend Hernan Magoya, who's a Spanish comics writer who was there with us. It was, for better and for worse, the most mind-blowing thing I've ever seen in my life. And
Yeah.
so there's that. And then the other thing I think of is in
I
around,
also feel like if nobody's made that into a like 8-page comic yet, somebody needs to.
I wrote a story about it. I also took a lot of photos throughout it. I had a
Okay.
camera on me, and I also wrote a story about it for the Comics Journal. This thing was such a scandal that it made national news in Spain.
Okay.
There were like elected officials who were not reelected because they were seen as being, party to this. I was interviewed as one of like three or four Americans in the audience. I was interviewed on national news and by El País, the biggest newspaper in Spain. Um, because just to give the American perspective on this crazy 9/11 sex show, basically. Um, it was wild. And yeah, just to this day, like, Peter and I bring it up pretty often, like, oh my God, I
Yeah.
can't believe we saw that. And then the other really wild thing that comes up a lot in the conversation with peers is around 2000, I got to go on this comic book cruise. There was a CBLDF cruise that happened down from LA down to three ports of call in Mexico for a week. And on this cruise was everyone from Will Eisner to Chris Ware to uh, uh, the Hernandez brothers.
Yeah, I knew I'd heard about
Uh,
the cruise, so it was probably Beto that brought it up.
it had Neil Adams. It was just like, and we were all just, trapped on this boat together for a week with few dozen comic book fans as well, just living and breathing comics. And it was a very memorable, kind of singular experience. It was fantastic. It was so weird and just fun. And then it was going to be like an annual fundraiser thing, and then they never did it again. So we got to go on the only one.
The one, right?
But yeah, those are probably two of the more unique experiences I can think of.
The very cool experiences, though. One of them would
I
have
mean,
been
I had,
absolutely terrifying.
yeah, I mean, there was, I will say, like the Granada thing. I was also there with a friend, a British cartoonist, Scottish cartoonist named Lorna Miller, really great independent artist, and she just happened to be there as well. And uh, she found it all very upsetting and very, very triggering. And in a way that was totally understandable. I was lucky enough to be like 20. I was in my 20s, and I was just pretty dumb and didn't, wasn't suffering from any kind of PTSD of any sort. So I was able to kind of take it in stride. But other people, it really was like a scandalous thing. People thought they were going to
Yeah.
die.
No, I mean it took me a while to figure out that you were talking performance art and
It was
and
it was
and
total performance art.
and like until I figured that out, I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, oh, I think the cruise was much more fun,
The
and
cruise
and
was
I
much
think
more fun.
I bet you you're able to laugh more each year that passes between the performance art and
Like I
because
said, I was for better or for worse, I I was not traumatized by it. I was
right.
really like I was kind of awestruck and like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. Just the sheer audacity of all of it and the production values. It was like an incredibly well produced affair.
At, at, at what point did you figure it out that it was production though?
Well, that's what I don't actually quite remember because my recollection is that they kept it very tight-lipped. They didn't want people to know that they were going to be a part of this, performance art. They wanted the shock value. Um, but at some point between these commando guys bursting in the room, which was genuinely terrifying for a few moments, to the point where Osama, obviously it's not really Osama, even though it looks just like
We
him on
hope.
this stage. It was sometime in between there, like somebody in our probably when they grabbed Peter to take him up on stage and tie him up, I think someone leaned into us and said, play along, please. But I don't completely remember.
Yeah, because I know the point for me in your telling the story where it finally became clear was when the paper airplane burst into fire,
Yeah,
because that requires planning,
yeah.
and not the type of planning that like somebody who actually intended to start killing people would likely give a damn about.
No, no. There was some very skilled technicians employed to put this thing on.
Right, right.
I
All
mean, they had like
right.
pre-wired this lectern to burst into flames. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. No, no. I mean,
It's like one
I,
battle after another when
I,
the beginning of one battle after another when Leo
I mean,
DiCaprio's character wires the all the
you
fireworks.
probably just made $30 for Fantagraphics, because I feel like I'm gonna need to get my digital subscription to the Comics Journal archive just to go find your story.
I hope you
Um,
can. If you do, let me know because it was something else. Let me tell you.
yeah, if you did it soon after, there's nothing on any of the covers from 2002 that indicates that it's in there. But
It was just a news story. It was only like maybe
right.
2 or 3 pages long with
Right.
some
And
photographs.
that's my point. It wouldn't necessarily be on the cover. I would have to like
No,
just start flipping through the issues until I find it.
yeah.
Do you remember roughly what time of year it was?
Well, this would have been like 2000, probably like spring of 2002. So it would
Okay.
it would have been I presume it was in, one of the 2002 issues, summer
Right.
of 2002
But
or so.
but it probably means I'm looking at like May, June, August,
That'd be my guess. Yeah.
maybe April.
Yeah.
But okay. So those are things to know now, and I already previewed it. Final question. So
Hmm.
I might come up with a baseball question to throw in afterwards. We'll see. Final traditional comics question. Tell me something you love, preferably comics, but we don't have rules. Preferably storytelling, but we don't have rules. Something that you love that not enough people around you have experienced, and you really, really would like them to, so that you have more people to discuss it with.
I can never go wrong with Rick Altergott's Doofus. If you're familiar with Doofus. If you aren't, it's, through no fault of your own. There's a very small body of work, few comic books, and then one collection from the late 90s, and then a new graphic novel that came out early last year called Blessed Be. Um,
Okay.
he
That's where I
is
recognize it, because you guys
he
put that out.
he draws in a kind of Wally Wood-esque style,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's in the service of some extremely kind of lowbrow humor. Um,
Okay.
I love his work. I think it's just endlessly hilarious and kind of even beautiful when it's like scatological or whatever. He's just one of the more singular voices in comics that just kind of marries all of my disparate kind of interests, whether it's like high craft versus lowbrow comedy versus transgressive kind of tendencies, and just mixes it all up into a really weird and always hilarious kind of episodic comedy about these kind of losers in a small town, flower town, USA. Great stuff. I have one of his covers on my wall here. So yeah, he
Gotcha.
comes to mind. He's one of my favorites. I
No,
really love
that's a very good one.
one of the cartoonists that I work with is a great Italian cartoonist named Manuel Fior, uh, author of.
I am a fan of his too.
I adore his work. I think he's one of the most beautiful and sophisticated makers of comics in the world, and we've published like 6 books by him or so, and I don't understand why he isn't one of the best-selling contemporary cartoonists working today, because
Uh,
his work is romantic and beautiful and just
uh-huh.
so visually rich and just so
And
such a high level of craft. It's incredible.
I just realized that you've done three of the ones that you've done I haven't read, so they just went on my list because somehow I missed them. But I love Hypericum, I love the interview, and I love 3,000 kilometers per second.
Yeah, yeah. All everything he's done is just wonderful. Such a sophisticated, world-class talent, and for whatever reason, English readers haven't completely embraced him the way that I have.
Which is just silly. Though, I think it was Matt Baker
Matt
or
Baker,
Dave
the
Baker, Dave
oh, Dave
Baker,
Baker, yeah.
that said Hypericum or used Hypericum as his thing that he loved that not enough people knew about.
Oh, cool.
Could be
That's great to
wrong,
hear.
but I know that Hypericum has been an answer to this question. I 200
Those
some odd
guys,
interviews. I don't and
yeah.
I haven't unfortunately talked to Matt Baker because that would
I was,
require a medium.
yeah. Exactly. Well, that's when you said Matt Baker, I was like, where are you going with this? Um, yeah, both Altergot and Fior, even though they're incredibly different artists, I would put them both in the cartoonist category,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
along with
This
like
red
Olivier Schrauen or Kim Deitch, or just those cartoonists that aren't bestsellers, but like every cartoonist loves.
Olivier Schwarren was in one of the very first times I asked the question was Bob Sikoriak's answer.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah. You guys publish a surprising number of the answers to that question, which is why I was so happy when Mark from Santos Sisters fame got me in touch with Tucker and I started having my pipeline to,
Hmm.
hey, this looks good. Can I talk to somebody?
Good deal.
Because yeah, I mean it's weird. Despite the fact that we started out with the very strong intention of um we want to elevate the medium of comics, to make it beyond superheroes, etc. Just because of who's easiest to get a hold of and who responds fastest, that sort of thing. We had way more superhero creators for a really long time because it's just harder to line up the indie people, either because they're not on social media or because, frankly, a lot of them, I think, are working or traveling a lot more.
Hmm.
Um, so getting that or them even, I mean, the number of people that like I'll see at another con and they're like, shit, I still haven't responded to your email. I'm sorry, I've got the 3-day jobs plus I make the con. I'm like, I totally get it.
Yeah, of course.
So it's been really nice to now have this specific pipeline into Fantagraphics to say, hey, Tucker, the new catalog came out. I'm really interested in this stuff. What can we set up?
That's good.
Um,
I mean, I can
and
tell you, like, ever
it's created some great interviews.
that's great. I love it.
You
I
know,
mean, my ever since the pandemic, and it really started with the pandemic, I've just become a voracious viewer of cartoonist interviews on YouTube. Um,
right?
and
Which
I
which we're
can't, I kind
going
of
to
can't get
start
enough.
doing sooner, sooner rather than later. I've started playing with. We finally have the all of our audio, I think, is up on YouTube now, and I'm looking at doing some video,
Hmm.
but I haven't gotten there yet because it just feels like it's time. Fifth year in,
Well,
feels like it's time to start.
I say watching, whether I'm watching or just listening to audio, it's
No,
the
I know
same
that
deal.
that
But
that's why we got the audio up because I realized that I do 80% of my podcast listening through YouTube. So I'm sitting there going,
Mhm.
this is
Whether
a
you're
this is a
watching or not.
place, yeah, this is a place where podcasts go, where people listen to
Hmm.
podcasts. I need to we need to be there too if we're gonna,
Yeah,
but
that's
there are a
certainly
few
true for me.
yeah, there are a few more hoops to jump through to get yourself listed. So I had to figure that out. But literally this week, because I'm still off of school, I've been playing with some video editing and whatnot, and ideas for even live streaming in a way that's more than just two faces. Um, because but the challenge is I don't want to be that guy that puts the whole comic up.
Hmm.
And the easiest way to do it is just flip through the comic while you're talking, but then you can accidentally put the whole comic up.
To my mind, Two Faces is fine if the conversation's good.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And Two Faces is fine. And like I'm not saying that like I have no interest in doing Two Faces
But I
either.
know what you mean.
But because it's a visual medium, it's like if we're going to do visuals, it like one of the challenges sometimes like we run into this all the time, particularly with like the book clubs, is like, okay, how do we best describe this amazing thing that you need to go buy to look at?
Right.
Whereas sometimes it would be nice to be able to just throw the panel up,
Yeah,
you know.
for
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
So, but it's a matter of figuring out how to prep where it's not a ton of extra work and or um, how to be able to do it on the fly where I don't feel like I'm showing too much,
Hmm.
you know.
Fair
But
enough.
yeah. So my final question, because I told you I'd come up with a baseball one.
Hmm.
Um, and you're enough of a baseball historian that like, and you shared a tidbit of information in one of our recent emails that just made me salivate. Um, So you said that Fantagraphics used to share a warehouse space with Ebbets Flannels, and that
Yeah,
when Ebbets moved out, they left a trove of alternates
they
for
left.
you to go through.
Yeah, we shared a warehouse space with them in downtown Seattle, and for them it was a smaller. It wasn't their full space. It was our
Right.
warehouse, and then they had a part of it that was just their irregulars, as I guess they call them now.
Irregulars, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
Um,
Meaning that a stitch is off.
right, exactly. But to the untrained eye,
Absolutely.
most of it looked
Absolutely.
absolutely perfect. And so
Right.
anyway, we both had to vacate this space, and um, they just abandoned most of it. Like they were fully out, but they left quite literally a small mountain of stuff. It was a big room where they had just, it wasn't even like cartons. It was literally just loose. I mean, there were boxes in
Oh
there
yeah.
too,
No, no,
but
no.
it was literally like probably a 10. I got a whole,
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
several caps here that I got,
Yeah,
but
no, no, no. I'm wearing one. I've got I've got a grazed one right by my feet because I was wearing it yesterday. So that's where the question comes. Tell me, because I assume you took many things. So give me your top three finds from that pile.
that's great. Yeah, I had a fucking blast.
Yeah,
It was like a shopping spree, It was like one of
yeah,
those supermarket
yeah. No,
shopping
I
sprees.
would have killed to be involved in that.
There's one right
Nice.
there.
Nice. I have both that and the cap,
Hmm.
the red and blue one with the soft bill. I love the soft bill caps.
Yeah. Well, I guess I mean, this actually isn't one of those, but I would be remiss not to mention the Fanta
Yes.
Edits collab.
And if you find another one of those, I like would be eternally grateful because I didn't know it existed until you guys were sold out.
There were very few made. It was like under a
Yeah.
hundred.
I know, but
Um,
it's still up on your website to taunt me.
yeah, right. This was a I don't this was a fun one. I have a good friend,
Hey.
Matt. Matt Johnson, who does a magazine in Seattle called PMA.
So is that
And
what it is, or does it stand
no,
for something else? What's
so it
PMA?
stands for something else, and I'll be honest, I don't know what. But I found a few of these in there, and I was able to give them to my friend Matt to just kind of help promote his magazine. He gave them out to some VIP friends. So that was super cool. I have a couple of killer jackets for
Yeah, those are the
the
ones that I haven't been able to afford yet. I have a
ancient
couple of jerseys, but no jackets yet.
for a Seattle ice rink that
Oh,
professional
nice.
hockey team played for 100 years
Nice.
ago.
Nice.
Um, so much fun stuff. It really was just like me and my coworker Kit Brash went down there one day and literally just climbing and
Yeah.
digging and what's this? And you had to not only find something that was cool, but also was your size, like
Yeah,
a
cool
lot
and
of a
fit.
lot of it was like, like triple XLs that I wouldn't wear, couldn't fit
Well,
into.
see, I would have taken
Um,
all of those. For
um,
that matter, they recently had a survey, and I said, I really like my sweatshirts big, and you don't even make 4XLs.
uh, but yeah, so anyway, that was super fun. And it was great to just not have like it was just there for the taking. The other
Okay.
thing I found, which I wish I had in here, I could show you, is
Well, I'm certain you'll be back.
I found a football poster, a screen print from
Oh,
the 19, I think it's from around 1930, from an Ohio company that made posters, and it burned to the ground like a year or two after this poster was made. I just did a little Google research, but it's a fantastic um, old screen poster. And the neat thing about it is it's got someone on the middle of it hand drew X's and O's like a play, like drew up a play on
okay.
it. And so I have no idea who it was, but I'd love to think that, it was some famous coach of that era who's like
Right.
jotting something down at the time. I've got it hanging up down
I'm
in my basement.
I mean, in general, I'm only a baseball guy and football in particular. I spent a decade in senior care
Hmm.
and dementia care in particular, so all I see is head injuries, but that still sounds cool.
Well, I'm actually the same. I'm like way more of a baseball fan than anything else, but this was a cool uh it's just a cool piece of graphic design and illustration. It's in like two or three colors and hand screen and close to 100 years old. And it was just tucked behind a bunch of crap and that it clearly like it belonged to somebody at some point, but
Right.
and who just
Right.
decided to stash it there for a while,
Right.
but I grabbed it and given it a good home.
All right. That made me think of one more baseball type question because you're enough, I think, of a baseball history geek that this question will work. Um, what team or barnstorming tour do you wish you could have seen? I'm taking it a step further than what player do you wish you could have seen? What team or barnstorming tour do you wish you could have seen?
Oh man, that's a really great question. If you ask like if that about a band or something, you'd be a bunch of stuff that comes right to mind. Baseball
Yeah.
wise, I mean, you you would never go wrong picking one of those Yankees teams um, of the late 20s and 30s during that big
Well,
run.
except that I'm more of a pitching
But
guy.
oh, I was gonna say except for the fact that I kind of hate the Yankees, so
That
that
too. I
so
mean,
that doesn't really. What I would
Gehrig I
say?
like. Bill
I would
Dickey
s-
was cool.
I would say those very early one of the LA Dodgers teams with Jackie Robinson.
Okay. Yeah.
Sitting
LA or
in
Brooklyn?
LA, I think. I mean,
LA,
Brooklyn would probably be the more historically kind of,
right?
relevant, but being a Southern Californian myself,
Well, and
um,
so was Jackie.
and
He was
that I,
probably as happy as anybody when they moved.
my dad was a Dodgers fan, and he went to the very first Dodger game in LA when they moved from
All
Brooklyn,
right.
and
I,
he
I,
was
I
probably oh
go
yeah.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like he was what year did they move? Like not I can't
57?
I was gonna say 58, 60, something like that. So he would have
No, it was
been
50s.
in his 20s, and he became a Dodger fan, for his whole life. He's passed away. But so I think I would have picked that. I would have liked to have
58
gone.
season.
I would have
58 season was the first.
loved to go be a Dodger fan from day one. I think that would have been pretty
Yeah.
cool.
I have historically been on the Giants side of that rivalry, but Shohei. Shohei. Um,
You couldn't
yeah.
go wrong seeing, Willie Mays in his heyday too. That would have
Oh
been pretty
God,
cool.
no. But I think the answer to my own question for me would be one of two more obscure things. I would have Satchel Paige did barnstorming t tours with the Dizzy Dean All Stars. So it was the Satchel Paige All Stars against the Dizzy Dean All Stars, and I think that those would have been, and you would have gotten to, I don't think Ruth was ever part of the Dean All Stars, but I think Gehrig was for at least part of a season. That
Mm-hmm.
sort of, or, and I didn't even know about this until Bob Kendrick talked about it, and he's got a podcast called Black Diamonds out of for the Negro League Baseball
Hmm.
Museum. The uh the first barnstorming tour of Japan was actually a Negro League team almost a decade before the white teams got there. And that
That
would
would
have
have been
been
pretty
cool.
cool. Yeah, seeing any of
That would have been cool.
any of the Negro League greats would, of course, have been be pretty amazing, especially
Yeah,
given
because
how little record there is of some of those guys. Like, just how good were they? How great
I
were
mean, we have, thanks to a handful of people who've
they?
done like some serious scouring of newspapers to dig up scores, etc. We have a much better idea of their statistical record than we once did, but like there's so little video or even action
Hmm.
photography. Um, I mean, we think that there's not a ton of video pre 50s for the major leagues, but you can find like 10 times as much video of Babe Ruth playing baseball as you can find of like all of the Negro League players combined.
Yeah,
I
right.
I think I think I've found like three clips of Satchel Paige before he was in the big leagues. You can find a little bit more of his time with the Indians.
Yeah, right.
I've found like one Josh Gibson swing. I don't know what an Oscar Charleston swing would look like,
Yeah, right, right.
you
Yeah,
know.
I wouldn't mind being at
Um,
the Doc Ellis LSD no hitter game too.
that
That'd
would
be
be pretty cool too.
fun.
Have you seen that documentary?
Yeah, it's great.
That's so cool. That's another one that I
Just to
think
see
there
if there's
is
like you
actually
could.
a comic on it.
Yeah, you
I
might be
feel like
right.
somebody did a doc comic.
I would love to just like,
Oh,
scrutinize his body language throughout that whole thing.
yeah, yeah.
It'd be pretty fun.
Um, no, there's so many so many great baseball stories. We need more baseball comics, Eric. You're one of the people that could make this happen. We need more
I,
baseball comics.
I don't disagree with you.
Um, and I feel like it's one of the most under-translated manga too, because that there's way more baseball manga than has been
Hmm.
translated.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, even if you didn't literally know, you would know because baseball's way bigger in Japan and comics are way bigger in Japan and
Yeah, right.
sports comics are way bigger in Japan.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're completely correct.
In fact, I don't know if you ever, I mean, maybe with the with the new Fantagraphics manga imprint, you'll be seeing more. There's a concept that I feel like has to be a manga. I can't confirm it, but everybody I know who's in Japan or whatnot, I'm like, look for this. This is one that I would read untranslated because there was a New York Times article, and I want to say 2022 or three, about the retired Yakuza softball team.
Oh wow.
The team literally wore pink and black uniforms because they originally had pink and gold uniforms, but they felt like the other teams um, were scared of them. And see, they're like the opposite of their league. Like their softball league has like PTA teams that are like cutthroat, and they're just out there drinking, smoking, and having a good time, right? And they want to be allowed to
As
do
every
that without the
softball league should.
right, right. And they don't
Mhm.
care that they get their asses kicked, but they would prefer to get their asses kicked than win because the other team is too afraid to play,
That's funny.
which is why they
That's great.
switched to
So
pink and black.
you're saying you know this exists, or you just are
No, this real thing exists. There was a New York Times story
okay?
about it. What I'm saying is manga is defined by take two crazy things that shouldn't be a story
Yeah,
and we're going to tell it. So I feel like there has to be a manga version of something like this. I
yeah,
mean, you
right.
have Way of the House Husband, which is essentially this for cooking. I would desperately like to see a manga about this. I don't know that it exists. I know that the actual team exists. The actual team has like between them, I want to say almost 200 years of prison time and is missing 22 knuckles, something like that.
Wow. All right. I'll keep that in mind.
But it feels like there has to be a manga. Can't you just
It
see
does.
that comedy baseball manga?
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. Good stuff.
Um, Eric, it has been a blast. We'll have to do this again
Yeah, thank you.
sometime. And for 22 panels, this has been Eric Reynolds, and we will see you after the next page.
Thank you, Tab.